As the worship leader at our church, I wasn't always able to meet and greet everyone who attended or visited before they left. But from up front, I could always spot any newcomers when they arrived. I noticed a new face in the back of the congregation one Sunday, but wasn't able to catch him after the service. He came back several more times, but I was never able to actually meet him. My daughters told me about this interesting guy who they met, and by their description, I assumed it was him. Husky guy, bald, always dressed in all black. Finally, I was able to meet this young man whose name was Albrecht Sanchez. He was Mexican, but spoke perfect English with a proper British accent. He was completely bald, which we learned was because of his chemotherapy and radiation treatments. Albrecht had cancer, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but he was in remission and was gradually getting his strength back. Al was an interesting young man, to say the least. He was a phenomenal musician, a former Nazi, democratic socialist, a former Satanist, raised by a single mom and his grandmother. In spite of having very little in common, we hit it off immediately and became fast friends. In fact, he became my best friend. He was 19 when we met. I was 41. We enjoyed hanging out together and sharing stories about life, and especially talking about spiritual things, predestination, free will, eternity, and everything else. Sometimes we had some intense arguments, but always came to appreciate each other's perspective. Al had definitely been on an interesting journey, and I was pleased to walk with him on part of it for the few years that I knew him. He had some experiences in the Christian church that left him with a bad taste in his mouth. He was judged negatively by so-called Christians because of his background, his taste in music, long hair, and political ideologies. He was referred to as a lost sheep by some Christians who tried to convert him, though he was already a believer. This really upset him and turned him off to traditional church. Al shared with me how he fell in love with a Canadian girl he met online. He actually went to visit her in Canada and proposed to her. He stayed with her family for a few months, and things were going well, until she started cheating on him, sleeping around with other guys and basically just ignoring Al. This broke his heart and his spirit. He returned to Mexico, devastated and disillusioned with life. Around the time I met Al, I was just launching the ministry of NACL in the inner city of Guadalajara. I invited Al to join me in this endeavor. He jumped in with both feet and actually became the co-founder of this ambitious initiative. We went downtown together every week to hang out with drug addicts, working girls, homeless people, and anyone else we happened to meet. His sweet grandmother would make a few dozen sandwiches for us to give out to people in need of a good meal, which helped us easily break the ice and make a lot of friends in the inner city. We didn't really know what we were doing, but we would try to share the gospel with anyone and everyone who would listen. Al was a little insecure about doing this at first, not sure how to explain the message clearly. That lasted about 5 minutes. The next thing I knew, we would be working downtown and suddenly I couldn't find Al anywhere. He would be around the corner preaching, or down an alley sharing the gospel with someone. He had found his gift as a one-on-one street evangelist. Al engaged people very naturally with his unassuming manner and winsome charm. He was likable and had a real gift for making conversation. There was no one he wouldn't talk to, except maybe really pretty girls, which made him very nervous. He had no problem talking with the working girls in the red light district, even though several of them took a liking to him. One working girl named Miriam took Al aside once and told him that she would really like to have his baby. Al blushed and told her he was flattered, but he was on a different mission. He told her he cared about her and wanted her to understand how much God loved her. He was a natural at turning every conversation toward the gospel. After months of grueling work in the inner city, we decided to take a break and try something different. We had worked almost exclusively with homeless people, drug addicts, and prostitutes until then. We wondered how it would be to speak with someone on the other end of the socio-economic scale. I suggested we put on our finest suits and go to an upscale restaurant bar and mingle with the upper crust for a change. We looked pretty snazzy as we walked into the UI restaurant and took our seats at the bar. We looked like a couple of successful businessmen having a drink after a day at the office. Totally not us. No one gave us a second glance, but we were way out of our element. Soon a very well-dressed man came and sat adjacent to us at the bar and ordered a drink. He was the real deal, unlike us. Independently wealthy to the extreme. We struck up a casual conversation and ended up spending the whole evening talking with this man about spiritual things. He told he had never had a conversation like that before with anyone in his life, and he was going to give some serious thought to the things that we had discussed. It's true that the gospel applies to everyone and transcends everything. After that encounter, Al and I spent more time hanging out with regular people in shopping malls and other public places. We enjoyed doing passive elevator evangelism, where we would talk to each other about the gospel while we rode up and down, making sure people getting on and off heard some solid nuggets of gospel truth without engaging them directly. We did end up talking to a lot of people personally as a result. Our friendship got stronger as we worked together and shared some unbelievable and unforgettable experiences. Dangerous encounters, emotional distress, and personal challenges. We were unlikely friends and colleagues, but in God's providence, we became inseparable. Our respective gifts complemented each other's, and we helped each other with our weaknesses and in difficult times. In every situation I knew, Al had my back and I had his. We hung out at each other's houses, went out for wings a lot, traveled together on my motorcycle around the city, made several trips to the States by plane and by road trip, played music together, and had many times of Bible study and prayer together. We also had some fun doing crazy stuff like going the wrong way up and down escalators with our friends Anna and Alma and playing pile-up with the gang of kids in the park on Saturdays. Most of our activities revolved around the ministry of NACL. That's where our hearts were and what we were most passionate about, intervening in the lives of others with the relentless love of God and His eternal truth. During the many hours we spent wandering the streets of the inner city at night, we met all kinds of interesting people: addicts, working girls, pimps, pushers, dealers, mariachis, street vendors, homeless people, poor, and many criminals, fugitives, and cops. Our mission was to try to demonstrate the love of God to everyone we met, then speak the truth in love. We never expected to actually fall in love with the people we met, but God broke our hearts for them by His grace. At church, we played together on the worship team and performed on stage together at a groovy retro oldies concert, dressed as hippies and rocking tunes from the 60s and 70s. Later, we performed in a full-scale musical stage production of the story of Daniel the prophet. I played King Darius and Al was Daniel. Al and I had so many adventures together, from the church without walls in the park, the cultural market evangelism among the urban tribes, inner city ministry with NACL, raising support at missions conferences in the States, playing together on the worship team at church, and jamming together whenever we had the chance. Al was an amazing drummer and could double pedal 1,000 BPM on the bass drum, and he was an awesome guitar player too. We often enjoyed good chicken wings, though his grandmother made the best I ever had. We cruised all over the city together on my motorcycle. We went on quite a few road trips together in the car and invariably disagreed about what music to listen to, so we would alternate between his music, metal, and mine, anything else. We attended a John Michael Talbot concert together in Corpus Christi one time, which was an awesome experience to share. We met a really sweet Ukrainian girl named Victoria in Texas and had fun hanging out with her and treating her to her very first margarita in New Braunfels. I could write a whole book about my friend, Albrecht, but suffice it to say, it was an honor and a privilege for me to know him, work with him, and call him my friend. Sadly, his cancer returned with a vengeance when he was just 23 years old, and despite many more chemo and radiation therapies, he never got well again. During his final days, we spent time together at his house reflecting on God's grace, reading His Word, singing His praises, and contemplating the glory soon to be revealed to my friend and brother. Al went home in August of 2010. Sometimes I still do a double take when I catch a glimpse of someone in the crowd who looks like Al. I don't think a day goes by that something doesn't remind me of him. I miss my friend, but I know it is just a momentary separation until I see him again. Until then, I will keep on with the ministry that we started together in the inner city of Guadalajara. Thank you so much for listening to this true story from Memoirs of Mexico. If you enjoyed this story, or if it was a blessing to you, please feel free to like and subscribe to my channel. That would be a blessing to me. I upload a new true story every day. If you like to read, you can also order Memoirs of Mexico in paperback or ebook on Amazon.com. There's a link in the description. Thanks again for listening.